Hey, how's it going? Welcome back. Yeah, it's kind of a gloomy Sunday. Figured I'd do an update. Got a stack of records from a road trip I took to Hamilton, Ontario a couple weeks ago. My friend Jen's doing a couple shows for Dayglow Abortions on their current tour. One of those shows is in Hamilton. So she wanted to go and hit up as many record stores as possible and, get the flyers out there and make sure tickets were available and whatnot. So she asked me to tag along, and who am I to refuse that? I'll go record shopping all day, pretty much any day. And we did. First things first, though, Hamilton has way more record stores than I thought they did. Unfortunately, Hammer City and Crash Landing are no longer with us, and that's a big unfortunately. But we still found like 10 other stores to go to, only 2 of which I had been to before, so this was kind of a learning experience for me. We started out at a place called Into the Abyss, small shop. Didn't have much I was interested in. There was a few old punk records in there, but the ones that I would have considered buying I already had, and the other ones I didn't really need. Yeah, cool store, just didn't have much for me. Then we went to Dr. Disc, which I've been to several times, and it's always been painfully unremarkable for me. I've never bought anything there, but we needed to go because that's kind of the central ticket hub for independent shows in the Hamilton area, as far as I can tell. So I looked around, and as I said, painfully unremarkable. And then as I was heading to the door to leave, something caught my eye, and I was like, holy shit, am I actually going to buy something from Dr. Disc? This is unprecedented. And I did. And what I bought was the new Voivod, Synchro Anarchy. It's a 2022 release on Century Media. Now, I haven't really fucked with Voivod since Nothing Face. I mean, they've popped up here and there over the years, but by and large, I've just always had other shit to listen to. That may have been a mistake, because this is pretty great. It's actually making me think I need to claw my way back through their previous releases just to see, what else I've missed. Did not expect to like this nearly as much as I do. Yeah, like Voivod, they need no introduction. It's a band from Quebec up here in Canada. Super talented band, super creative, dissonant, cryptic, in all the best ways. Super, super good. Yeah, this kind of shocked me how much I actually like it. They're going on tour for this soon. They're playing here June 4th. I plan on being in attendance. So, yeah, props to Voivod for throwing me for a loop, because they certainly did with this. So next we went to a place called Flashbacks. Never been there before, never heard of it. One of the Google reviews says it may very well be the best record store in Canada. So as soon as I read that, I'm like, bullshit. I would have heard of it before now if that were the case. So we went there. The owner was a nice guy. Didn't have very many records there at all. Most of the store was like DVDs and Blu-rays. But the records that he did have were cheap. I looked through them, and I did find one that I wanted. More of a hole filler than anything, because I like to grab early Toronto stuff when I can find it, and I didn't have this one. It's the self-titled LP by True Confessions. It's on Bomb Records. It's from 1980. This is really just keyboard-heavy, kind of new wavy power pop. It's got Julia Bork in it, who was previously in a late 70s Toronto band called The Curse, who you might know from their single Shoeshine Boy, which is fantastic. There's a dude in here who was in a band called The Cads as well. They did a record called Do the Crab Walk. This doesn't sound like either of their previous bands. This got a little bit of notoriety because there's a 1987 film called The Gate that a lot of people may be familiar with. It's kind of it's a Canadian film. It's a schlocky horror / sci-fi type deal. But 2 of the tracks off this record were on that. Yes, It's True and Modern Personality were both on the soundtrack for The Gate. Now, these guys had a single before this, but the vocalist on that was a girl named Ruby T. And she was the girlfriend of a guy named Mike Nightmare, who was the singer for a band called The Ugly. they were kind of an infamous early Toronto punk band. Like, the members were all known to be like, you know, thugs and criminals and whatnot. But she was the singer's girlfriend at the time. But she was photographed a lot. And kind of maybe the Toronto equivalent to that Catwoman that used to kind of run in the Sex Pistols circles over in the UK. Kind of that kind of a deal. And then after doing, well, she was, like I said, she was on the single before this doing vocals. And then she just dropped off the face of the earth. I mean, there's all kinds of, you know, stories about what happened to her, but I don't think anyone's ever found out for sure. But I mean, there's stories about how she overdosed and died, obviously. There's stories about, you know, her getting, you know, sold into human slavery. There's a story that her car broke down on the 401 and somebody, you know, pulled over to help her fix the car and ended up murdering her with a hammer. And, you know, an ex-boyfriend beat her to death. And there's all kinds of stories, but there's never been any concrete, you know, truth brought about it as far as I know. So, yeah, whatever. Bottom line, she's missing. All right, then we move to kind of the new Toronto punk records, or the new Hamilton punk record store that I, you know, hadn't been to yet. It's kind of small. It doesn't have a crazy amount of stock yet, but I think they're just starting. But it's called It's All Right, Ma. Looks like he's on the right track to me, though. Definitely deserves support. I bought a few records from there. I got this. Depraved, Stupidity Maketh the Man. It's from 1986. It's on Children of the Revolution Records. It's a, you know, British hardcore punk band. As soon as I threw this on the turntable, I was like, this sounds like Visions of Change, except a bit slower. And then after, like, kind of, you know, looking into the band, I find that the singer and one of the other members were also in Visions of Change, so that makes sense. Yeah, it's mostly just, like, mid-tempo, kind of gruff vocal, melodic, just British punk. You know, it's pleasant enough. A lot of the British bands towards the late part of the 80s seem to kind of take this route. Like Exit Condition, they slowed down and went this route. Snuff kind of started out on this route. And it all kind of evolved into like Leatherface and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Depraved. And I grabbed this. It's a 2019 release. But it's Afrika, 1979 to 1982 by Wild Youth. Now, I have both of the reissues of both Wild Youth 7 inches, but this had a little bit more on it. Arguably the first punk band to come out of South Africa. You can hear a little bit more about them if you watch the... there's a documentary called Punk in Africa that's pretty awesome, and they're featured in it. You know, it's catchy, well played, you know, just early punk rock from South Africa. Well done. From a place where it was definitely challenging to be a punk at that point in time. Members of this band went on to be in Power Age, who are, you know, probably the best known of all the bands that these guys went into. Some of them went into a band called Gay Marines, though, which is an awesome punk name. But, yeah, it's on, what's the name of that label? Patron of the Arts. Was released in 2019. Pick it up. Ryan Kidd, you would like that a lot if you don't have it already. Next up, a 6 Weeks Records release from 2014. It's No Fraud, Revolt, 1984 demos. First became familiar with No Fraud because they were on the North Atlantic Noise Attack compilation that Manic Ears put out way back in the day. It's a band from Venice, Florida. This is really just textbook, you know, 80s US hardcore punk. It's fast, it's unrelenting, it's angry. The fat's all been trimmed off this. There's no extra fucking around. There's no, you know, wankery, nothing. It's just straight up, you know, fast hardcore punk. Super good band. And the sound quality's surprisingly not that bad for demo recordings. There's another one that was released in 2014. It's a reissue, though. It was originally released in 1984 on Reamed Pork Records, which is hilarious. But yeah, this is a Beer City Records reissue. Suburban Mutilation. The opera ain't over till the fat lady sings. Again, kind of textbook 80s US hardcore. Fast, angry. The thing I like the most about this is the fact that the guitar player is really good at doing nonsense solos. Like, you know, completely off the cuff, just goofing around solos, but he makes them work. Vocalist is Reverend Norb, who would more recently be found in a band called Boris the Sprinkler, that are more of a kind of a garagey pop-punk type band, who are actually really good. Dude's got a lot of personality. He's a great frontman. But, yeah, Suburban Mutilation, Green Bay, Wisconsin. And we headed up to Ottawa Street North, because there's a few blocks there where there's like 3 or 4 record stores just within walking distance of each other. We stopped at one. We didn't end up going in because just the way it looked and all the stuff they had on the windows and that, I kind of gave the impression that it was more geared towards like 50s music and like doo-wop and stuff like that, which doesn't really have much of an interest for me. But just down the street, there was a storefront that had a big wooden LP placard on the side of the building. And I thought, oh, that must be the next record store. And I went in and, yeah, it wasn't the next record store. It was really a head shop. It was bongs and 420 dude, like bullshit all over the place. But they had a, fairly big, stack of records in there. So I went looking through. And the first thing I find is M.I.A, Notes from the Underground, on National Trust Records from 1985. Now, I love M.I.A. I love their early stuff more than this, though. It was a lot faster and, but still super melodic, and I dug it quite a bit. By this point in time, they had kind of evolved. They slowed down a bunch, and they kind of took more of an Agent Orange direction. Still completely pleasant, still catchy, still memorable. It's just, I kind of like the fast stuff better. They started out in Las Vegas, made their way to Orange County, California, which is, definitely where the influence for this record came from. But yeah, I've never owned this before, and it's good. I'm glad that the head shop had it. And then the second record I got at that head shop was Wehrmacht, Biermacht, on New Renaissance Records, 1989. It's a band from Portland, Oregon. They were kind of like, the brother band to Cryptic Slaughter. Like, they played a lot of shows together, and they were, super tight. And that makes total sense because this sounds like a more straight-up thrash metal version of Cryptic Slaughter. So, yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. This is really, really good. It's fast as fuck. Lyrics are kind of goofy, but what do you expect? But, yeah, I was actually kind of surprised to find this in there, and it wasn't expensive at all. Yeah, it's got a cut quarter. Don't give a fuck. Wehrmacht. And then we made it down, we made our way down to a place called Out of the Basement. This place had a fucking bazillion records in it. And the owner, imagine if you will, a lifeboat washes up on the shore of the island of Dr. Moreau. And inside this lifeboat is Captain Lou Albano and Danny DeVito and R. Crumb. He's captured, or all 3 of them are captured by Dr. Moreau's fucking henchmen or whatever, and he makes a mutant hybrid of the 3 of them. That's what the owner of this store was. He was a hybrid of R. Crumb, Danny DeVito, and Captain Lou Albano. Total rough around the edges. Weird dude. There was a couple in there, and they were super stoked to have found the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, and they fucking bought it for 20 bucks. And then, I get my record up to the counter. which is Plasmatics, New Hope for the Wretched. The only reason I bought it is because when I did the contest entry for Ground Zero Salem's contest, I talked about the Plasmatics. I couldn't find this record anywhere. I know I have it, couldn't find it. Figured it was misfiled. My OCD got the best of me. I tore my collection apart. I still can't find it. I don't know where the fuck my copy went. So I bought this replacement copy. On Stiff Canada, it's from like 1980. Yeah, everybody knows the Plasmatics. Kind of goofy, cartoony punk. Wendy O. Williams, usually with electrical tape on her nipples. Sounds like fucking Bullwinkle when she sings. Mixed with the Cowardly Lion. Got Richie Stotts, probably the greatest cartoon punk ever. But regardless, I get this up to the counter, and the guy's like, oh, you like Wendy O. Williams, eh? And he pulls out this like live bootleg of some show, and he's like, yeah, this one's real raunchy. So there's people in the store, and he's just cranks this thing up, and Wendy's just being super vulgar with the stage banner. This guy did not give an ounce of fuck about it, so I can respect that guy. Out of the cellar, or out of the basement, you have my repeated business next time I'm in Hamilton. So anyways, that's it. Kind of a stupid off-the-cuff update, but there you go. Is what it is. See you next time.